Let's dive right in. So that's me. I showed this slide last night for anybody that was kicking around. That's the gist of what I've been up to for a little while. If you haven't seen me on social media, find me one time and I will follow you for the rest of your life. That's all I have to say about that. So when I graduated from chiropractic school, this is what I felt like. Anybody else? I was pumped. If you weren't, like, what the hell, man? Come on. So I was pumped when I graduated chiropractic school, and for me, my journey was a little bit different. I ended up joining a pretty large, I practiced as an associate, I had my own clinic, and then I joined a hospital-based orthopedic group, which to me, I was like, this is a waterfall of infinite patience. These guys have like no concerns in the world. I joined this group, it's gonna be all good forever, and this is not an actual picture of my waiting room, but it was a close interpretation of what happened my first day there. Tumbleweeds and all of that fun stuff. So that was not very inspiring because everybody that I was practicing with, neurosurgeons, orthopedic guys, you name it, were just loaded with people. But I probably should have asked more questions before I signed that contract. Number one, good lesson there. But number two, I had to figure out how I was going to build my practice within theirs. And that's really where all of this started. And I won't belabor the point with my backstory, but ultimately, the evidence-based chiropractor it became something because I had to figure out how to run a practice. And when I joined that group and I had those tumbleweeds, I created some flyers. Right? I'm like, okay, I'm gonna market my practice. So I created some flyers, handed out to some people in the community, and instantly the marketing department was like, dude, what are you doing? You can't just go like all cowboy here. We have like an actual system and process for how we go about things. So that is what led me to say, how can I bridge the gap? How can I build relationships with these other docs that I'm working with? Because that's the only way I'm going to survive in this practice. And that is really where everything had started with the evidence-based chiropractor and why I stand here today. So we're going to talk about three things relative to that. The current state of spine care, a research review, outreach, and communication is what we are going to go through. Does that sound good? Am I talking way too fast? All right. Good answer. So why does this matter? We kind of talked last night about why things matter in terms of people hurting, but there's a lot of money out there. And it's not all about money, but I think this is important to put in perspective. When we look at how much people are spending on spine care, let me take a step back. Who thinks that chiropractors are probably the best spine care practitioners in the world? That's a lot of money up there. Is anybody taking home half of that? If so, I'd love to meet you. So that's a lot of money, right? So we look at the late 90s, we look at the early 2000s, mid 2000s, and by 2020, we're talking $140 billion, something to that effect. That is a lot of money being spent on spine-related care. Are people having more spine-related issues today than they were 20 years ago? Yeah, I don't think so either. So there's just expense going out like crazy. Where is some of this expense going to? If you've heard me talk, you've probably heard this stat before because I think it's startling. 9 million epidural steroid injections are given each and every year for spine-related complaints. They're not FDA approved for spine-related complaints, incidentally. That's 25,000 ESIs given per day. That is a lot. That is a lot. And those cost a lot of money. If we look at how much people are spending per person on their spine care, well, it's going up. That makes sense, right? The money's gonna come from somewhere, so people are spending more. And what happens if we place that against how many spine fusions are being performed each year? Do people need more spine fusions today than they did 20 years ago? I don't think so either. If we overlay those last two graphics, what do we have? A pretty solid correlation between the amount of intervention, expensive intervention being performed, and cost. There's no surprise there. That makes sense. Rods and screws are expensive. I practice in many groups that do that, and that's a primary generator of revenue. If anybody wants to know numbers, I'll talk about it on the side. But is that expense improving results? What do you think? Yeah, I don't think so either. So, and I thought of this when I was creating this presentation. When I first created the bones of this a couple years ago, I said, all right, well, let's see if that expense is improving results. And if you look here, that's a small little dot. These are all within 1 day of each other. So we have Medtronic with leaky spine devices. We have Medtronic paying $22 million in settlements. We have FDA warns of cortisone injections to the spine. This is all within 1 day. Imagine if there were 4 articles about chiropractic that I could search in one day. So my point with that being, we don't have all this baggage and all this junk. This is crazy. And this is what's going on day in and day out. And for me, I'm going to repeat this multiple times, this is why it's so important to bridge the gap with other healthcare providers in your community. It's going to be good for your practice. More people can make you more money. You can do more things, all of that fun stuff. But I want to get real. If people don't come to see you, they're going to be going the other direction. So to me, it's negligent, especially for the people in this room. If you're not actively bridging the gap with other healthcare providers, you know where the people in your community are going if they're not coming to see you. And they're going to end up in a not ideal state. So NSAIDs, one of the most commonly prescribed items for spine-related musculoskeletal complaints, only 3,000 deaths annually. Do you think that chiropractic adjustments cause more than 3,000 deaths annually? No, I don't. So that's crazy, right? And these are prescribed. People take these like candy all day, every day, not a thought in the world. Oh, it's only an NSAID. Well, it is only an NSAID until it's not, right? Regarding those injections, and this is all the doom and gloom, by the way. We're going to be uplifting towards the end. Well, we start with framing it. So what about those injections, right? This is something I don't think anybody talks about. 21% increased risk of spinal fracture with each ESI. That's wild. How many people do you see that's like, I had 3 last year, 3 the year before that, I'm on the 3-a-year plan for the last 10 years. So I like this slide not to rag on interventional spine guys, but I actually say this slide, this is why it's important to ask good questions and why it's important to have a good communication channel with the other docs. If somebody's been getting, if they're 12 injections deep, I might think twice before I'm doing like a full-scale body drop on them. I may choose to do a side posture adjustment, don't get me wrong, but I might choose to use a different technique as well. So important to ask these questions when you're speaking with a patient because they're clinically relevant, and it's a good educational point as well. So what do we know about the success? Well, ESIs are generally successful for approximately 50% of patients. That's inspiring. That's called placebo effect, if anybody, generally successful for about half the people. Well, that's not very good in my opinion. Talk about documentation. Chiropractors constantly are on the hook, right? It always seems like chiropractors aren't doing a good job. We all should do a great job with documentation. But how about this? In 2011, 50% of the nearly 500,000 spinal fusions lacked adequate documentation. That's from Becker Spine Review and Spine Health. So 50%, I think it's kind of important to have adequate documentation if you're having rods and screws placed in your back, but that's just me. So documentation is key, and this is what's going on. I say all this because this is what's going on outside of our world, and I think it's very important to know that to be able to frame what we're going to do. This is the medical director of Spine Health said this. I love this quote. Lumbar spinal fusion surgery only works for specific indications and can only work if we can identify what the pain generator is. Probably 80 to 90% of the time we can't. All right. So that's the doom and gloom portion. And I'm hauling right now to make sure we stay on schedule. So let's take a look at chiropractic, because I think that the research supporting what we do is paramount. I think that there's nothing that equates to it. And yes, of course I'm going to pick positive studies when we talk about what's going on right now. That's the point, right? But I would encourage you look yourself. And I'm going to show a graph of what the research has showcased over the last decade, and it's something that all of us should be aware of. So to me, our utilization should be a lot higher, 10 to 15. What do you guys think the utilization of chiropractic is? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I used to have this at like 5, but then somebody's trying to push me higher. But it's probably somewhere between 5 and 15. I think it's hard to get a really good answer with that, and different studies have different subsets of people, etc. But as we talked about earlier, or we talked about yesterday, and we kind of touched on at the beginning, 90+% of people are going to have some spine-related complaint in their life. 90% plus, that's AKA everybody. And a small fraction of them are going to have some organic component to it, right? Unfortunately, it's a malignant tumor or something like that. Thankfully, that's a small portion. But we're seeing at best 10 to 15, it's just not good enough. And to me, where are people going? That's what I just think pragmatically. Well, if they're not coming to see us, where are they going? Well, they're probably going to PT. They're probably going to their primary care doctor who's not routing them to us. Like, people are still doing stuff. Nobody wants to have a bad quality of life. Small percentage of people do. But most people are actively trying to get well. So for me, it's then, okay, how do you go to where they're going and showcase what you do in a way that's complementary? And nobody's going to want to hand over their wallet, right? So how do you frame it in a way that works for everybody, where you're not taking away from the other practitioner and creating competition, but you're creating a value add and a complement to what they're doing that's going to lead to happier, better people in the community. So that's kind of the framing for everything I'm about. This, I hope this is updated sometime soon, because 2002 is a little bit old, but this is something that I saw presented quite a few years ago, and for me, it's one of the most powerful pieces that I can showcase to you today. So what is it? Well, when we look here, again, this is a little bit dated now, but this is, you know, a variety of challenges or symptoms or pathology, however you want to define that. And this is the amount of studies drawn that had, you know, positive, you know, so-so, and negative, right? In other words, it didn't help regarding chiropractic. And if we look here, we have the low-hanging fruit at the top, right? Our low back, our neck, all the stuff that we know, and then it gets into a little bit more, you know, stuff that's, you know, a little bit outside musculoskeletal realm. But if you look at the negative side here, I'll give you a hint. There's a lot of dashes. Dashes does not mean infinite. It means zero. So this is a slide that any other profession in the universe would absolutely die to be able to put up. That at worst, it's so-so. By the way, we just looked at something that said ESIs generally work 50% of the time on people. And we look at positive, and it's overwhelming in terms of the numbers there. So I'm hoping that this gets updated sometime soon, because I have a sneaking suspicion while there might be a negative one or two that pops up, the positives in the middle are going to be triple or quadruple, because the amount of research that's been published on spinal manipulation, on adjusting, has been significantly more since 2002 than before that. So for me, this is an exceptionally important piece. And we'll go through a couple studies right now that have taken place since that time that I think are important. So, stroke and chiropractic care. What's anybody think? Stroke's no joke when you're talking about chiropractic. That's my quote. It's a terrible quote. Don't say it anywhere but here. But anyway, let's take a look at what the research says, right? Because I think that's the important component. And this is European Spine Journal. And a lot of these studies that I'm going to showcase, there might be a JMPT 1 or 2, but a lot of these are going to be spine, European Spine Journal, people that have no stake in the game to showcase us in a positive light whatsoever. So let's take a look at this study. So it was a 9-year study. 9 years is a pretty long time as far as I'm concerned. I graduated chiropractic school 10 years ago. I did not have gray in my beard, and I had hair. That was an eon ago in my time. But 9 years is a long time to do a study, right? It's longitudinal. No evidence of excess risk of VBA stroke associated with chiropractic to primary care. So they looked 9 years, tons of patients, people going to chiropractors, people going to primary care doctors. No change. No change. So that is a positive one as far as I'm concerned. JMPT in 2013, this is a long title, and I'll read it because it's a little bit small up there. Symptomatic MRI confirmed disc herniation patients, a comparative effectiveness prospective observational study of 2 age and sex matched cohorts treated with either high velocity, low amplitude adjusting or nerve root injections. So let me repeat that in English. People get an MRI, there's a big disc pressing on the nerve, they got an injection or chiropractic, who wins? That's basically what they looked at. So I like this study because I'm also going to say this a couple times. This is pragmatic, this is real. Like, how many times have you guys seen patient comes in, maybe they have a little bit of radiculopathy, they go to see their primary care, an MRI gets ordered, their primary care doctor's like, man, there's an MRI, the MRI shows a disc, I knew it. You got to get an injection. It's like, hold on a second. Like, just because there's a disc bulge on an MRI doesn't mean you fast track necessarily to an injection. But let's take a look. So this is MRI. This isn't like just on exam findings. This is, we see there is a mechanical issue on the picture. It's MRI confirmed. Systematic review of the literature done the next year concluded that spinal manipulation is a very safe and cost-effective option to treat disc herniation. All right, that's warming things up. It's not going to like light my fire entirely, but it's nice they say it's not the worst option. So let's take a look at step 2. Both treatment groups had significant decreases in their NRS scores at 1 month, with 60% reduction for the adjusting group and 53% for the nerve root injection group. So let me repeat that in a different way. Disc pressing on a nerve. See it on an MRI. Clear as day. Some people go in, they have steroid loaded into the area via an injection. Of course that's going to make them feel better for a short amount of time. Give me a break. An adjustment outperformed that. That's significant to me because, again, this is all framing back. We hammered through a ton of stuff at the beginning, right? But it's important to understand what else is going on and then understand where we fit in. You look at, again, this is a disc pressing on a nerve. See it clear as day on that MRI. People go in loaded with steroids right on that area. 53% are feeling better. People get a series of adjustments or manipulations, 60% reduction in that pain score. Outperformed the injection itself. Big one. What's another one? Spine Journal. Adding chiropractic manipulative therapy to standard medical care for patients with acute low back pain. So this is one that was actually recently updated, but I think it's a good one. Take a look at the chart here. I like it when things do this on the chart when it's in our favor, right? So if we look and we see much better or a little worse, if you had standard medical care, the chances you were much better are actually probably worse than placebo. If it was, which doesn't make sense, but you get my point, in a little worse, you were probably going to get a little worse. When chiropractic care was added, much better. That's just a little difference there. And a little worse, not so much. So what was the difference? That one right there. So that's big. And again, this is framing against, it's not saying taking away somebody from somebody else or anything else like that, but this is pragmatic. When you're talking to somebody, primary care doctors have the worst tools possibly available to treat spine and musculoskeletal complaints. They have no tools. So they're doing something with these people. We already looked at NSAIDs. We know the injection side of things, and now we look at when they add chiropractic care. Big differences across the board. There is a statistically and clinically significant benefit to those patients receiving chiropractic care. So this is good because statistically and clinically significant are not terms that are thrown out like when I say things are wicked awesome. They're like, this means something. So it has to reach thresholds to be able to say that. And if we take a look at what the graph that I showed, what does that mean in real life? Well, 73% of participants in the standard medical care and chiropractic group rated their improvement as completely gone, much better, or moderately better. 17% if they did not have chiropractic. That's a big difference. I mean, I'll tell you from a surgical capacity, I'll talk to some of the surgeons that I've worked with in the past or follow up with. They're like amped if there's like a 3% difference on something. This is crazy. I mean, this is like literally the other spectrum. 2010 outstanding paper, Medical and Interventional Science. This was that Chiro study from the Spine Journal, an award-winning paper. And gosh, that is a little bit small, I apologize. So basically they looked at clinical practice guidelines on medical and chiropractic management of mechanical low back pain. So this is what they kind of set the framework with this. They said, well, you know, the usual care for this kind of stuff is physical therapy, narcs, you know, just throw out narcotics, the huge, no big deal there. NSAIDs and reassurance that the person's going to feel better once the narcotics wear off, apparently. Or they said evidence-based care included chiropractic, exercise, NSAIDs, and reassurance. So I say this because sometimes I see people questioning as far as, well, where is the literature and what do people think and where is chiropractic? Spine Journal is already saying we're part of the best evidence-based care model. That's not even a question at this point. Now, how is that getting people into your office is a problem. And that's why we're going to talk about in the second half of this, because it's not translating to what's going on day in and day out, but the literature supporting us as the best options, it's almost passé as far as the researchers are concerned. Yeah, of course we are. The evidence-based care group demonstrated significantly greater improvements in reported function through 6 months follow-up. I like 6 months, I like 1 year, because that's another thing you might hear from time to time. Well, people like feel better because you're touching them, and then it goes away. It's just not true when you look at the literature showcasing 6 months, 1 year, etc. down the road. It's just not true. The results of this study demonstrated, now touch is important, don't get me wrong, but my point being is that the effects don't have to be only short term. The results of this study demonstrated that in equivalent groups of less than 4 weeks duration of pain, the clinical practice group with the evidence-based care did better. We know that. Two previous studies that demonstrated, we're going to break this down, that demonstrated primary care physicians are highly guideline discordant and PCPs are highly resistant to change. This is the problem, right? Highly guideline discordant, highly resistant to change. Highly guideline discordant and highly resistant to change. That is the biggest challenge that we're up against, is habit a lot of times. Habit for a lot of these people. Important to keep in mind. Spinal high velocity, low amplitude manipulation in acute non-specific low back pain. Another spine article in the last couple of years. And they looked at diclofenac and manipulation, and we see a very similar story to what we saw before, right? Diclofenac is meandering at best. Chiropractic adjustments, manipulation, however you want to say that, much better result. And the same thing over here, right? Complete relief, a lot of people compared to nobody that deteriorated. Here, just as many found relief as deteriorated. Important to keep in mind. This is the first time that spinal manipulation was investigated in a double-blind randomized controlled trial showing clear superiority compared with placebo and NSAID. That's another important one because I think a lot of times people say, well, chiropractic's never been shown to be any more than placebo. It's just wrong. And if anybody looks at the, I shouldn't even say this actually. If anybody looks at the YouTube comments on my Joe Rogan rebuttal, don't do it at work, by the way. It's nasty. But there's a lot of people who very just clearly don't know what's going on. You can point them in the right direction, they just don't want to hear it. That's okay. Not everybody is going to be informed, and not everybody is going to love what we do day in and day out. But I want you to know, when you're reading through garbage online, that a lot of what you're reading is uninformed and not true. Manipulation can be recommended for the therapy of nonspecific low back pain. And final evaluation showed manipulation being significantly better than NSAID and clinically superior to placebo. As far as I'm concerned, that's that. So, current state of MD-DC relationships. I like to look at some papers. I can tell you my word, but I say don't take my word for it. So we can look at what's going on in the real world. This is like the perfect title of a paper as far as I'm concerned. Referral patterns and attitudes of PCPs towards chiropractors. So this is a good one. And this basically dives into exactly what we talked about last night. 85% reported their patients had asked them about chiropractic care. There's demand. 85% have been asked. 75% have had patients ask for a referral, not just say, hey, what do you think about chiropractic, but hey, can you send me to somebody? Do you know somebody? It's a lot. Falling off a cliff here. 25% have referred to a chiropractor. In the case of this, what they mean is the individual said, yeah, you can go see one. Number one, that should be higher. Number two, if they say go see one, they should be saying your name. And then finally, initiates a formal referral, ultimately saying your name, right? Hey, why don't you go see Dr. Jeff down the street? Here's the slip. That looks like this. A lot of people asking. Not many people being directed into our practices. What's this? Ah, nice. Love it. That is correct. That is opportunity. When there is that much demand and this little action taking place, this is massive opportunity. You kick this up to here in your community, you never have to worry about a patient again in your life. I'm actually, this is weird to say. Right now, for all of us, I'm happy this isn't straight across. If that was straight across, well, good luck. You either have to be so much better or you have to compete on price. Only two options. That's not the case. This is educational territory. This is relationship building. This is opportunity to serve a lot more people. Does it make your practice more money? Yes. Does it help you have a better standing in your community? Yes. Does it ultimately, and I say this not being dramatic, does that save people from surgery that are unnecessary? Yes. Unquestionably. Unquestionably. So they identified 4 key attributes of collaborative care. Communication, defined scope of practice, service delivery, and patient-centered care. Meaning they want to know what's going on with their patients. They define scope of practice, not trying to put you in a box. They just want to know what the heck you do because there's so much variation. Service delivery, can they get people in? How do you go about your business, so to speak? And then a patient-centered model. That's ironic, right? Because I would say that they might be lacking in that one. But That's a whole nother story, right? When we looked at the previous literature. So the costs are staggering, patients are suffering. It's time for us to promote ourselves. So we're going to go through we're staying right on time. I love this. Is everybody doing good? We're like going through crazy amounts of information super quick. All good? All right, cool. So we'll go through a process that I've certainly worked with people that are members of the evidence-based chiropractor. It's what's in the books, what I talk about all the time. But we'll break down different aspects of where I think is important, or what I think is important when reaching out to other docs. Because once you have a framework and a context for the literature, for the research, it's important to know how to put it into action, right? You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you're not able to communicate that to either your people in your community or the other docs, well, it's nice for you to know, but it's not doing as much good as it could. So we'll go through all of that fun stuff. And we're going to go through it in a couple different fashions. I think I have 5 bullet points here that we're going to talk about. Careful targeting, speaking a common language, relevance and value, trust and rapport, and consistent follow-up. These are kind of your tenets of communication with other healthcare providers, in my opinion. We'll break each one down. Careful targeting. You need to know who you're going to reach out to start reaching out, right? That's an important component, is to know who are the docs in your community, who are going to be people who are going to be your referral partners, who are not. And I have seen this happen haphazardly so many times, it's crazy, where it's like, well, like I met with that one doc down the street like 2 years ago, but it didn't work. It's like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, it's literally the same as being like, well, you know what? I ran a crappy Facebook ad for 30 minutes to a bad subset population, and I got no leads from it. You'd be like, this doesn't make any sense. Of course that didn't work. The same thing applies to relationship building. It's about having a process. It's about having a system. And the more consistent you are with that, the better the result you'll get. Straight up marketing. It's not. You don't have to be a wizard genius, as my daughter would say. So 50 total docs. So I like a list, building your target list, right? You need to have one centralized depot. I like having one Excel spreadsheet that has all the docs I want to reach out to. Now, I'm not like flim-flamming around for information. I'm not confused all the time. Tracking is important. So I make an Excel spreadsheet, 50 total docs. That little fishing net is to catch docs with, in case you didn't catch that. So really small docs. So when we look at that 50, how do we break that up? I love 75% of my list being primary care, internal medicine, 25% being specialty related. What does that mean and why? Well, 75% primary care because 30% of their daily volume should be being referred to us. 30% of their daily volume is spine and musculoskeletal in a PCP office, typically. There's some exception to that. But so I like to go where the fish are. But I still like to have some specialty related. So 25%, the back end of your list, related to people that you like, right? For me, I have OBGYNs, midwives, doulas, pediatricians. Other docs that I work with don't want to see those people at all, nothing against them, but they'd rather be on the sports side. So they have sports medicine docs, orthopedic, like make it who you'd resonate with. The thing is, with many of those docs, patients are going to be a little bit farther down the line, and some of them don't do as high a volume. So that's why I like the meat of my list to be where the fish are, with the primary care, but a little bit on the back end for people who you think you're just going to be able to build really great relationships with long term, based upon mutual patient population. So how do you find these people? You can walk around town or drive. That's one way. There are also easier ways. MD search, WebMD has a free tool, and you just click on physician search. You type in your zip code and what kind of doc you're looking for, and it gives you a list of names, addresses, phone numbers. And it's free. ZocDoc does the same thing. Best way to go about it is your own patients. Your own patients. Who here collects the primary care doc information? All right, good. Brennan? So collecting your primary care information up front is super important to build your list, right? These are people you're already co-managing with. They are the lowest hanging fruit there possibly is. So asking your own patients. I recommend, I'll go off on a tangent on this just for 1 second. I recommend a 2-step approach to that. Number 1, have it on your intake form. You will shoot 40 to 60% collection rate, but when they don't fill it out, then just ask them, hey, John, I noticed you did not fill out the primary care information. Love to have that so we can keep the best case record of you possible. Super simple, super easy. You don't have to like bend people over the coals on this and like, try to strong arm them into it. Just let them know, hey, we like to have this to have the best information for you. They say no, might be 5% of the time. Okay, cool. but you're going to get your collection rate up significantly, which helps your process down the road. Speaking a common language, it's to me, this isn't about speaking their language or our language. It's about communication. They have to know what you're talking about. You need to know what they're talking about. What's the easiest way to do that? Through case notes. Case notes do a few things. They provide social proof that you exist and that you're on planet Earth. You know you do, but many people in your community probably don't. So it's always a good opportunity to showcase to other practices that you exist. Send a case note. What else does it do? Well, it emphasizes the co-management. You're only sending the note if the patient's coming into your practice, right? So important. It showcases that you're actively treating. You're co-managing with these people, whether they know it or not. And then the third part about it that's not on the slide is ultimately it showcases the results that you get. There are two ways that you can show results in your practice. It's very simple, very clear. One's B2B, one's B2C. B2C is testimonial. You get a testimonial, you put it on your Facebook page, whatever, Google reviews, whatever it may be. That's B2C. That's people showcasing to other consumers, other potential patients, hey, here's the result I got. That's that. You should do that. The other thing is you're missing 50% of the equation if you're not sending updated notes throughout time to the PCPs. How many people here would say that more than 50% of their patients after a course of care are doing better than when they came in? Okay, good answer. So most chiropractors like 80 or 90%. This is the thing. It's not like we're like, well, you know what? Like our statistics are crap and the research is garbage, so I'm scared to get these things out there. 80 to 90%. You're working hard, you're breaking your back every day to help these people, physically and mentally, and you're helping them get well. Show it off. The only opportunity you have to do that B2B is through a case note, and it's through a reevaluation note. So I recommend sending it on 3 times: eval, reeval, and discharge from active care.
So on the case notes, when you're collecting your patient's primary care provider, if they've never gone to the primary care provider for this issue, how do you do that in the case note? Like the doctor, if they refer to you, it's different.
Yep.
Expecting the case note problem.
Yep.
But, yeah.
I would say that it is, I would do it exactly the same way. So I don't care if they were referred in or not referred in. The primary care doctor, to me, by definition, is kind of the quarterback of their healthcare. So if that person goes into maybe not a dentist's office, but it's any other healthcare provider, including us, I think it's imperative. Now, you want their permission, you want to be within the letter of the law with HIPAA and all that fun stuff, but that's where they give you the name and say, yeah, you can send the information. I send it right there and then. Hey, and you know my story, I know, but it's like this is where it just comes down. Hey, John came in 2 days ago with sciatica. We're going to treat him over the next couple of weeks, and we're looking for X amount of improvement. Super simple, super easy. You're keeping them engaged. You're keeping them informed. It's all good.
So don't wait until they're.
I don't know, no, because I think you want multiple touches. That's the key. Because when you send your eval note and that person's in pain, now you send your re-eval note. Now you're a hero, right? So, and you get multiple touches. Again, like from a marketing perspective, the more touches you get with these guys and gals, the better. So, in a case note is a great excuse to have a touch that's patient-centered. Because there's no fluff. You're just telling the story. This is what's going on with the person. So, on that case note, diving right into that, I recommend keeping it super simple. Who's the patient? When they come in? Why'd they come in? And what are you going to do about it? Keep it simple. Here's what you don't want to have happen is, because I don't want to go too long on this, but I'll break this off real quick. So here's what happens with the case note. You send it across. Chances are the doc does not look at it whatsoever. It goes in the chart, physical or digital. Patient comes in to their office, could be 1 week, could be 2 weeks, could be 1 year down the road. Doc's walking down the hallway to open the door to speak to the patient and opens the chart to look before he opens the door. If you send everything and you're like, you send 27 pages of an exam with Kemp's test the 4th time that produced, like nobody cares. And they're going to look at that and be like, I'm standing out in my hallway seeing patients. I'm not reading this. You lost. So when you can send it quick, simple, and easy, oh, John saw Dr. Bates 2 weeks ago for sciatica and he was going to treat him for a couple of weeks. Hey, John, how's it going over there? Statistically, 80 to 90% of the time, John's going to say, great. That's a win. And that is exactly what you want to have happen, which is why it's important to get those touches in. Case notes, one other thing on case notes, because I've seen, and if you listen to the podcast, you heard me go off on this a little while ago. Case notes and meetings are not the only way. You have to have consistency. You can go months at a time without seeing a co-manage a patient with some docs, right? 50 doc list. You might go months at a time without being able to send a note. It's just, you can't control who walks in your front door directly. You certainly can't control who their primary care is. Consistency is key with marketing and sales and everything else. This is where case notes and meetings alone, meetings, you're not going to be in a doc's office every week, and case notes, you could go months without a touch point. Bad marketing. Important to do, but you have to have a consistent piece in there, which is what we'll talk about, monthly research updates. That's why they're so important. Top secret bonus tip, grand rounds. Most hospital systems host orthopedic or spinal grand rounds. What they do is the spine device companies, Medtronic, NuVasive, you name it, Stryker, Titan, whoever, they have booths like this. They pay money and they feed you and everything else. And you show up and you hang out. And all the medical doctors get continuing education credit and you don't. That's the bad part. The good part is they are all there in one location. It's a great opportunity to meet people. It's a great opportunity to understand who's who in your community. And ultimately, like, I've presented at multiple hospital grand rounds at this point. And I'll tell you, the first 3 times I went, I sat in the back and I was silent. If you're more outgoing, you might even be able to expedite these way quicker than I am. But I'm kind of shy by nature, actually. So I just kind of sit and watch. And I was like, okay, now I see who's the big dog here, who's kind of the other guys, and just got the vibe. That can serve you so well. And they have to, most of the hospital groups have to open it up to all types of providers. That's how they're able to do it and get the funding and the room with the hospital and the device companies paying for it, is they have to keep it open. So I recommend, if you don't know anybody or an orthopedic group or anything like that, literally call the hospital. Hey, this is Dr. Jeff, curious on when your next spine or orthopedic rounds are. They'll figure it out and they'll let you know. Important to attend that. That's a great way to build trust and rapport and meet people quickly. Relevance and value. Deliver value. Oh, this slide got a little bit off. To deliver value, I exported from Keynote to PowerPoint. Deliver value to them and their practice. It is about them. When you're going into somebody else's practice, nobody cares anything more about anything else than their own practice. So like anything, make it about them. And how do you do that? I think there's a couple of different ways. What I call 3 legs of the referral stool: meetings, case notes, and monthly research. Case notes substantiate the social proof that you exist, the fact that you co-manage patients, and the results that you get, social proof. Monthly research gives you the consistent touch point, out of sight, out of mind. If you do not have that, you will lose. And number 3, meetings. Meeting with these docs builds trust and rapport quicker than anything else, and it gives you unbelievably valuable information to be able to position yourself. Very, very important. Everybody doing good? Everybody doing all right? All right. That was dead silence. That's not good. All right, so trust and rapport. So as we kind of come towards the close here, the MD meeting, let's talk a little bit about that. So there's a very specific way that I feel like is the best to go about meeting with another healthcare provider. There's not one way. There's not the only way. I tell everybody that I work with, there's no magic numbers. There's no magic scripting. There's no magic anything. It's about communication with integrity of what you believe in and how you do things. So we try to break things down as simply and easily as possible, but I always tell people, feel free to like hack it up a little bit. Do your thing. Make it feel comfortable for you. You shouldn't feel like a robot, like, okay, Jeff said, hi, I'm supposed to say hi first, right? You don't want to be like a complete weirdo, so just be normal, make it in your own words. But it's important to have a framework. And with meetings, this is something that I've seen time and time again, is there's many docs that go in and they don't have a plan. So again, that example of like, well, I met with a doc 3 years ago one time, but I didn't see anything from it, so I figured I might as well stop. Not only is that just nonsense completely, but typically then I'll ask, well, what was the plan going in? Well, I was going to tell them about they don't care about chiropractic. So you have to go about this in a way that informs and inspires them and asks questions. Get them engaged with who they're seeing. Where can your practice help or fit in? Not just like beat them over the head with chiropractic. So, and I give a pretty good example, I think, in terms of setting up this meeting. I'll give this tidbit and then we'll dive right into the meeting. So here's the way I have found a lot of chiropractors go about setting meetings with medical doctors. And this is literally what it sounds like to them, in case you're curious. Bring. That was a telephone, old school telephone. Hey, what's going on? This is Jeff at Langmaid Chiropractic. You guys have a lot of patients, and I'd love to have some more patients. And, chiropractic's great. I'd love to take up your time and tell you about everything that I do can I come over tomorrow? Like, that's not good. Like, it's terrible. You don't want to say that. But that is what many people sound like. So I'll propose an alternative for you. This is not in the slides, but here's what we coach on regarding making that call. Bring. Old school telephone still. Hey, this is Jeff over at Langmaid Chiropractic. You know, we've co-managed quite a few patients with Dr. Smith. Never had the opportunity to meet. I'd love to come over and learn more about your practice. Who can I speak to in order to set up that meeting? Totally different. A couple key points there. 3 key points. Co-manage. Hey, this is Jeff. We've co-managed quite a few patients. If you have not, because that's the other question. Well, what if I know I haven't? Well, don't say you have if you haven't. Hey, we've heard great things about your practice. If you can't say that ethically, don't call them. If you don't think that they're a good practitioner, don't call them. There's plenty of fish in the sea. So bring. Hey, this is Jeff at Langmaid Chiropractic. We've heard great things about you guys. I'd love to come over and learn more about your practice. You're automatically planting the flag. I want to learn more about you. In this case, that's not a bait and switch. It's true. And then the third component, who do I speak to in order to set up that meeting? Somebody controls the book. That's a little bit slick on the marketing side, but somebody controls the book and you want them to direct you to a person. So that's when it's like, oh, well, it's Debbie. Write down Debbie, because then if you don't get a hold of Debbie, now you know to call next time on your follow-up. Hey, I'm looking to talk to Debbie. You know what I mean? It's all progress, stepwise. So Socratic method. 3 big questions that I want to get to if I'm meeting with a doctor. 3 big questions. And these are arbitrary, like frame these how you see fit. Are you currently seeing many patients with spine complaints, musculoskeletal complaints? However you want to define that. What are you seeing more of? That establishes them painting a patient picture. And what is your current treatment protocol? How do you take care of these people? If you are standing there asking that question, you are not their number 1 choice. So it's kind of important to know what is. So are you currently, and I'll break these down very quickly. Are you currently seeing many patients with spine complaints? Important question right off the bat. That is a 99% time that is going to be yes, of course we do. At which point you say, great, so do we. But the 1%, when they say no, is even more valuable. No, we don't. That's interesting. What we have found throughout hundreds of docs at this point, and tens of thousands of communication, is ultimately you're going to get 1%, 5%, somewhere in that low percentage that they'll say no because they have a friend, a family member who's a PT or somebody else down the street, and they're referring all their spine or musculoskeletal there. I'd rather know that day than 6 months from now after I've spent a lot of time, energy, and money trying to reach out to this doc saying, hey, why? And most people don't cough up this information. I say this out of experience. I've gone through great meetings and then 6 months down the road be like, I can't understand why this person won't refer me. We had a great meeting. Well, of course we had a great meeting. They had no stake in the game. They know they were never going to send me anybody because like their sister-in-law was a physical therapist down the street. So it's important to ask that right off the bat. It also gets them engaged a little bit. They're going to say yes 99% of the time. Cool. What are you seeing more of? Get them to paint a patient picture. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter what they answer. Because if it's going to be spinal musculoskeletal related and they're not an interventional oncologist, it's going to be exactly what you see. A little bit of everything. Oh, we see people with headache. We see more low back pain, people swinging golf clubs, whatever. But it gets them to engage with their practice, talking about what they're seeing. And it leads nicely into number 3. How do you take care of these people? What's your current treatment protocol? That is the clincher, right? That's what you're trying to get to. Understanding what they're currently doing so you can better establish how you make things easier or better for them. The great part about this, as I will continue to say until it's not true, there is like 3 options that people use. There's not a million different options where it's like, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? They have no good tools. NSAIDs, physical therapy, and referral to other specialists is all that they do. One of 3 things all day, every day. That's really easy to be prepared for. It's not a million different choices on like a Plinko board or something like that. Anybody know what a Plinko board is? All right, good. So that is important to know what they're currently doing because you can establish value add in multiple different ways. I'll give one example on those 3 to make sure that we stay right on our time. So what do you guys want to hear? Do you want to hear, I say rebuttal, that sounds very bizarre. PT, okay, good one. So if they're referring to PT, well, so anybody that knows me, you can't answer. So, I've talked to multiple times, that kind of thing. So what would be an example? What would anybody have a guess on what they would say if the doc says, well, we typically refer to physical therapy, great results, we're happy with it. Any ideas? What's up?
They're getting great results.
Yep. So how would you say, if a doc said that to you, what would be your rebuttal? What can you value at? Or are you just like, all right, cool. What's up? Good, good. I think it can be cleaner and easier. That's a good answer though. Yes. There is going to be a certain subset of patients that fail, and having a secondary option is important. I think there's even more upstream turf. Turnaround time is important. I think that's a very important one. I saw a hand going up and back. Okay. So here's the way that I would go about that. And again, this isn't like my way or the highway. There's a million different, you could get wildly creative with all this. I love both of those answers, and I think you can frame them different ways. Here's the way I respond. Hey, we refer to physical therapy, we get great results. I say, well, my wife's a physical therapist, so you should send to us. That's a joke. My wife is a physical therapist, but no, I do not say that. So, what I'll say is, hey, I think active care is extremely important. But what we have found is with our referral partners, they love working with us because we're able to get the patients over within 24 to 48 hours. We're able to establish some proper biomechanics before strengthening. We've seen better results there. But really, they love when they don't have to do any burdensome verification or authorization for service. You can refer them right over. We'll get them over quick. The sooner a patient gets started conservatively, the better the outcome on the back end. So I'm saying, in essence, that was a little bit sloppy, but essentially I'm saying, I hear what you're doing. We believe in active care. Yes, I'm saying active care back to them to not say physical therapy, a little bit of a differentiator. Then I'm saying, hey, I understand a frustration point that you must have. PT people usually don't start for 3 to 5 days. That could span a weekend or go the next day. Most people in this room can probably get somebody in their office in 24 to 48 hours. So that's important. Great point there. We're happy to get patients over from our referral partners within 24 to 48 hours. That helps them get started sooner, and that yields better outcomes on the back end. But where a lot of people really love what we do is eliminating that verification process. Here's what that means in a nutshell. I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but here's what that means. This is the one instance that I always say this is why it's great why there's a million different insurance plans. If a doc is referring a patient that has Medicare to a clinic that takes Medicare with no supplements or anything else, no, they're not authorizing benefits. They already know that's the scoop. But here's the great part about United Healthcare Plan 72, Supplement Z, Pink, like just these weird, crazy plans of supplements, is that anytime they see anything funny, they're going to have their front desk staff call to verify benefits before they refer out to physical therapy because they feel responsible for that. They're paying their staff member to call for services that they're not going to get paid for. Nobody in business likes to do that. So when they can know that they can refer directly into you with no authorization process, that literally saves them time and money. So you could talk about results, you could talk about time, you could talk about outcomes. There's a lot of different ways you can go with that, but those are a few points. That's a couple in one rebuttal, but you could choose one and just hammer down on that. Also, consistent follow-up, in my opinion, is the crux of outreach. So following up with actionable research, to me, is the best way to go about it. Who here believes that it is good to send a medical doctor a 10% off coupon? Good answer. All right. So did I see a hand back there? I'm just kidding. So yeah, there's a different way you're going to communicate and ultimately market your practice, B2C versus B2B. That's what this is all about, right? So when we're talking B2B, you're not going to send an MD a coupon that he's going to give to his patients. It doesn't make sense. Obviously, it's like, what? Like, of course you wouldn't do that. Well, the question then becomes, what are you going to do? And there's a lot of people that don't have an answer to that. It's like, well, nothing. Not a good answer either. So this is where research becomes a huge ally of ours. If our research sucked, that'd be hard. Use what you got. We have great literature supporting what we do. It comes out all the time. There's a backlog of stuff if you've never outreached that you have 10 years worth of stuff before you even have to think about trying to find something new. It's crazy. But getting out there with it is important, and it gives you that touch point. Again, my opinion, case notes, showcasing that, exceptionally important. Foundation. Nobody's ever had their office flooded with referrals due to case notes alone. But a nice, clean case note, actionable, some companies here that do a great job with that, is very important as a foundational component. You want to up your game from there, then I think it's about getting out there and doing those meetings. Nobody's going to argue with that. We've talked a little bit about that. But I love to have those consistent touch points in the middle. And with that, this is sort of a template style of what we utilize at the Evidence-Based Chiropractor. And you can tell one thing with this, it's one page, right? I always say, if you start sending people 20-page research papers, you are punishing them. You're not helping them. Nobody wants to read that stuff. So if you're going to do the outreach, the onus is on you to frame it in a way that matters to them. So that is why we use a very simple process. One peer-reviewed piece of research, one time per month. Cite it, put some quotes, and frame it with your own words upon how and why it matters to them, their practice, and their patients. A doc gets that. At worst, they're seeing your name in a professional context, becoming a leader in education in your community. At best, they're going to take action ultimately with their people. It's always going to be looked upon in a positive light. It's value add to them. It's value add to them. So what I would say as we come to a close here is you can make a difference. Your friends and neighbors are counting on you. You guys know and saw all of the research in the literature. When people are not coming into your practice, the other side of that coin, it's not good for the people in your community. So it's important for all of us to make sure we are doing everything we can. It'll help your business become more stable. It'll help your business become more profitable, but truly you will help people get the care that they desperately need. And hopefully that chart of fusions and that chart of intervention can stabilize somewhat. And certainly if you want to check out, maybe not. Oof. Oh, there you go. All right. So anybody that didn't check it out, you can, oh man, the link is super blurry. So the evidencebased-chiropractor.com/FCC. The evidencebased-chiropractor.com/FCC. You should be able to download Marketing Chiropractic to Medical Doctors there, like a PDF for free. So feel free to dive into that and check it out. Additionally, I have a whole bunch of stickers over at the Med Zone area. So if you want any evidence-based chiropractor stickers, please grab them over there. And I know Joe also at Med Zone is going to run a few contests. I brought some posters. So he's posting stuff on Facebook. So keep your Facebook feed fresh and head over to Med Zone. Hope you guys have a great day. I'll see you later on this afternoon.